yeah, just a little bit about myself. I'm, as Dave said, from Cardiff University, and more precisely the School of Social Sciences. I'd like to say thank you for inviting me to present today. What I do in my day job is research and teach in the area of skills and workforce development. And in my research, I publish mostly on skills and training and work and employment issues in the European steel industry. I've been researching the industry, at least the workforce side of it, since about 2001. I've seen lots of changes. But today I really want to discuss with you briefly, at least, some important challenges facing the steel industry across Europe and in the UK. And in particular, the talent and skills implications arising from those challenges, as well as cover some recommendations for securing the much needed talent and skills needed for the industry. What I have to say today is mostly informed by 3 projects that I've had involvement in recently. And in the case of the ESSA project there, continue to do so. That runs till the end of 2022. Just to say a little bit about each of these projects, the Steel Careers project that ran 2019 to 2020, funded by the European Union, and was focused on researching the skills challenges faced by the European steel industry in terms of identifying and meeting future skill needs, and exploring ways in meeting those needs of recruiting talent to the industry. The European Steel Skills Agenda, or ESSA project, as I mentioned, is ongoing. It has a similar remit to Steel Careers, also funded by the European Union, but is much more focused on developing working solutions to the skills challenges identified, particularly around green and digital skills, as I'll come to. And finally, a recently completed project that we did with Community, the trade union that of course represents many steel workers, is the Preparing for a Just Transition project. And this, it was released to coincide with COP26 and explored the technological innovation for a greener steel industry agenda, and addressing the skills challenges that emerge for a socially just transition as part of the sustainable industry. Now, as many of you I guess are perfectly aware, the steel industry in both the UK and the EU faces some considerable challenges, not least in terms of global competition, the dumping of steel on the region, and some measures have been put in place to mitigate against that. But there is a struggle to remain competitive in the face of the mass production from China, but also areas such as countries like Turkey and India. In the UK in particular, the struggle to remain competitive is made worse by higher energy costs than the most of Europe. And according to BICE, a reported lack of investment, higher business rates, and higher logistics costs. And of course, this is set against the context of our most recent challenge, of course, the pandemic and COVID-19. But in skills and talent terms, what is of particular focus is for the UK and EU is the twin challenge of greening and digitalisation. So the industry needs to decarbonise, as we've been hearing in the presentation so far, and I haven't attended the rest of the conference, so I'm guessing that's been a particular focus. And also incorporate the opportunities presented by what is the so-called Industry 4.0 or digital technologies, and things such as the Internet of Things, big data, cyber physical systems, robots and cobots, and so on. So on the slide in this figure 2 from one of the reports is an example of the various technological pathways identified to decarbonize and reduce CO2 emissions in the steel sector. And of course, these are all different stages of development, incorporating hydrogen, green electricity, carbon capture and usage, And in parallel with this, we see the emergence of digital technologies for improving energy efficiency, water and wastewater management, and emissions control. And this way, stepping towards the greening of the industry and a more sustainable industry. And of course, to meet decarbonation targets, there's a need to attract and recruit new talent and upgrade skills. And this is a reflection of a more general transition to a high performance manufacturing that is going to be informed increasingly so by digitalisation. And this will increase the need for more highly skilled and qualified individuals, a more highly skilled and qualified workforce. Not only in terms of technical skills, but transferable skills as well. But this, in parallel with this, we also have the heightened risk of technological unemployment if we fail to upskill the workers that are currently employed to the industry. So this is a table from the ESSA project, one of the reports produced by myself and my colleagues. It's focused around the case studies that we've conducted in Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, and the UK. So this represents the 10 most cited skill needs in the steel industry in those countries, with so-called green skills. And I realize there's lots of issues around how we define green skills, but green skills broadly, however we define it, cutting across these various areas. What the ESSA project finds more generally is a demand for what is termed T-shaped skills. By that we mean both technical and transversal or transferable skills. The term we prefer to use is transversal, of which digital and green skills are both part. But of course, there are always barriers. First, I'll talk about the barriers to digital and Industry 4.0. And this actually draws on a couple of, well, a paper and a report. So table 2 is from a paper, Technological Forecasting and Social Change. And the list there below that is a list compiled by Swansea University's Centre for Materials and Manufacturing Education, Training and Learning, which identifies for us a range of barriers to Industry 4.0 implementation. And some of these are skills related, identifying lack of in-house talent, lack of knowledge about the technology, but a wider range of barriers that have skills implications. So, for example, with regard to cyber security, which requires the development of appropriate skills, and human fear is often fueled by ignorance and lack of education on the technology. And this is picked up also in relation to green skills. So this is from the community funded research on green transition, where we find that while steel workers are on board with the green transition, they appear ill prepared and little consulted about it. With areas of training neglected, a lack of skills among the workforce to support the green transition, and worries or fears about what the transition will mean for their future employment. And from the Steel Careers Project, in terms of recruiting skills, this is what we find to be the most in-demand jobs in the sector. There's nothing new here in terms of new job profiles based on technological developments. So we find this in ESSA as well. It's not that new job profiles are appearing. The new technologies are not disruptive in that way. It's more that these jobs are jobs that will require upskilling in view of the new technologies and new demands for sustainability. And so, of course, part of this is about the solution of upskilling the existing workforce as well as recruiting new talent. And here we see from, again, the steel sector careers report, in terms of recruitment, this is what we find tends to motivate students and job seekers to work in the industry. Some easier to address than others. So location is always going to be a problem. We can't if we even wanted to, move Port Talbot to somewhere where that students might find more attractive. I think Port Talbot's fine myself, but the location is an issue. But what the industry might be able to look towards is ensuring permanent positions, creating a diversity of tasks to keep jobs interesting, offering training opportunities. And as we find from other sectors, it's normally that young people prefer to go to multinationals and large companies rather than SMEs, probably an issue of security there. But you can see there's a range of issues that might need to be addressed to attract young people to the industry. Now, I'm going to turn to some of the recommendations from the Steel Careers report for addressing the skills and talent issues. And these recommendations are a broader set of recommendations, but within the report, we highlight particularly the issue of digitalisation and Industry 4.0 and green skills. So they're at the forefront of minds when considering these recommendations. So first, there is a call for more active skills monitoring, and what is called for is a skills observatory. And this would be to monitor on a regular basis emerging skill needs, which would allow the EU and national policymakers to take more informed decisions, allow education providers to adjust the curricula of educational programs in line with those, and allow companies to develop and implement better informed hiring and skills development strategies. Second, I think the broader point is that there's a pressing need to improve the image of the sector and the careers within it. This requires communication of the positive aspects of working in the industry. So, for example, showcasing its role in the circular economy and its sustainability goals. We also need to look at the working conditions and stress that it's not how people think it is all the time. There are relatively good wages and benefits, and it's a much safer and more automated environment than it once was. We need to stress these over what people often find difficult: the shift work, the noise, the dirt, the heat, which is still there. But the more people are working in automated sort of ways, in pods, they're taking away from those sorts of hostile environments. Plus, we need to look at widening the scope of the disciplines from which the sector normally recruits. And the recommendation there is to look more, particularly in line with digital and greening, at IT, graduates, and people who graduate from environmental science, and also law, and actively promote the sector. And I know this goes on in some places, but actively promote the sector in primary and secondary schools. Other ideas include making more of a wider circle of talent and increasing efforts to draw on those currently underrepresented in the sector, so that particularly women, and ensuring that such groups are aware of employment opportunities and promoting opportunities to them, addressing discrimination, awarding best practice for inclusion. So just coming to the end now, last couple of slides. So the steel industry requires a greater focus on transferable and digital skills, and more training resources need to be devoted to these areas. The report recommends a repository of on-the-job programs and practices at EU level. We also might think at UK level, now being outside the EU. This is in order to share good practice. We also suggest that companies explore opportunities for training partnerships with other companies, including to identify barriers to training and learning. And workers also need to understand better the importance of lifelong learning and engaging with training, because training avoidance does go on. But this will, of course, require employers to provide opportunities, but also, I think, to consult with workers. And this is a strong theme of this particular report and the Just Transition report, particularly in line with increased social dialogue in this area is recommended. And as the industry loses workers to retirement, there's a need for knowledge transfer to document good practices and develop means for passing on knowledge, particularly that picked up from experience, and to mentor less experienced workers as they develop their careers. And such mentorship programs, we could also look to provide certification and accreditation of some sort. And further mentorship or knowledge transfer might work both ways. So it's not always from older to younger workers, but also from younger workers to older workers, what the report termed reverse mentorship. This is particularly where perhaps green and digital skills are concerned, where young people might be a bit more conversant with those demands. And that knowledge should not be lost once workers retire. So experts might be recruited from retirees to pass on their knowledge to apprentices and new recruits. And there's a very active program here at ThyssenKrupp that works quite well. So these are just some of the various recommendations the report details. But in this last slide here, because I talked about concrete solutions, this is what the ESSA project looks to tackle and provide some work on. And the main part of this, it's divided into three parts. Now there's a demand side aspect to this, which picks up on the Observatory recommended by the Steel Careers Project. And this is the European Steel Technology and Skills Foresight Observatory. Part of this is the European Steel, sorry for all this, the European Steel Technology and Skills Foresight Panel, which is a survey that will be organized through the European Steel Technology Platform that will take place on a regular, perhaps biannual basis, but will also involve a set of experts, a Delphi survey, where the needs of the industry will be identified in terms of the new technologies emerging and the new skill needs emerging as well. So this speaks to, being certain about what sorts of technologies and skills are coming through and how they can be better aligned. We're also working with World Steel and the Steel University to have developed, in relation to the demands that are emerging, meeting that with supply. So the Steel Hub is based around online training and gathering together best practice from steel companies and elsewhere, and creating a hub of steel training programs from which steel companies can draw down the programs. Trade unions also can draw down. Any kind of steel stakeholder can look to access the Steel Hub and make use of the training programs that are part of it. And lastly, I'm not sure who's here at the, I'll come to an end, Dave. It's the last one, is the regional training ecosystem. So we're aware that each region has its particular sorts of needs. And recently we held a workshop, which is for the South Wales region, to bring together stakeholders to work out how best to operationalize and sustain what ESSA is developing. And I'll finish there.